views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and journalists and editors, and we've expanded it to include photographers and videographers and filmmakers. We always say it's anybody putting stuff out in the Bronx. And this evening, I am just absolutely thrilled. Talk about putting something out. Fred Kaufman has been the executive producer of one of the great programs of our lifetimes, and that is the program Nature, that is on PBS for 4 decades. You can do the 4 times 10. We're up to the 40th anniversary. Fred has told stories that connect viewers with some of the most amazing creatures in the world, and if you've ever seen the program even once, you're like, wow, what a world do we live in. And he's done it with a sense of humor, with a sense of passion, with a sense of artistry, and celebrating his 40th anniversary. It's my pleasure to welcome the executive producer of Nature, Fred Kaufman. Nice to have you with us.
Great. Well, great to be with you. Thank you.
Do you count? I mean, on my other program, Bronx Talk, we've done 1,322 shows. Do you know how many shows of Nature you have done?
I don't know how many shows, but certainly a few hundred. But I think I could say confidently that after 40 years, I've probably have seen as many, if not more, wildlife documentaries than anybody else on Earth. So I feel pretty comfortable saying that. I'm up there, and I don't think there's many, if anybody else, who's seen as many wildlife shows as I have.
Now, when you say wildlife shows of your own, plus you watch others,
Yeah,
presumably.
over 40 years of our own shows and screening shows and seeing other shows.
So one thing that comes up for me is that I know a lot of people. My guests have all, and so now I know them. And if I need contacts, whatever, I guess those animals don't claim to have relationships with you. They're like, oh, here's Fred again. He's coming out to shoot the rhinoceroses. I guess that doesn't come up.
Not with me, but we know animals. Some species recognize human beings, and over the course of filming, they do recognize people, and they know what to expect. And I've seen it many times where animals are sort of wild animals are more docile around people that they've been around for years. So
Wow.
they don't recognize me, but they do recognize other humans.
And recognize that, wow, these are human beings. Ever been really scared? I mean, because when I watch the show, I'm scared for the photographers and people near there. I guess in the past, when you had to get much closer than you would now, I guess.
Never scared about the animals, but at times scared about the circumstances. For example, I'll never forget, we were doing a film on the volcano in Hawaii, and we went up in a helicopter at dawn. Beautiful light. It's not quite bright yet, but it's it's not night, it's not dark. You have this beautiful blue sky. And we were just hovering over Kilauea, which is the bubbling volcano. And I was in the front passenger seat, and it was one of those bubble type helicopters, so you could look down
Right.
at your feet and see below you. And the cameraman was behind us, and he was strapped in, but he was holding the camera, looking down, and his feet were dangling. And we were just hovering there.
Now I'm scared.
And I said to the camera, I mean, maybe 30 seconds into it, I said, okay, I think we got it. And he said, no, not yet. And that was unsettling for me.
Wow. And I mean, here I am thinking of charging rhinoceros or a tiger or whomever, but it was the human element that was most frightening.
It's the human element. It's the planes. It's the roads. It's the infrastructure of some of these third world countries that could be quite dangerous, and you need to be careful, and you need to be concerned about safety. Now, as far as animals are concerned, If you do anything that startles an animal where they're becoming defensive or wanting to attack, well, that's a huge no-no in my
Yeah, I
book.
was going to say that's got to be a mistake.
That's a
Try
mistake.
not to do that.
Exactly. So, we want to be in a place where we're observing and not sort of uh, affecting their behavior. So you never want to do anything that scares them or causes them to want to attack you.
I alluded to it earlier. I was thinking, especially looking at the expanse of 40 years and hundreds of programs, it must have been much more difficult in the past to get the kinds of shots that you can get now. Now there's drone technology if necessary. You can stop action and all that kind of stuff.
Well, let's take a drone, for example. In the past, we would have to hire a helicopter at about $400 an hour.
Wow.
And then we would have to put these stabilizers on the helicopter for the camera so the camera doesn't shake and you just get a vibrating
Right.
picture.
Wow.
And you had to get fuel for the helicopter. So to get the aerials back in the old days, it was a big endeavor and expensive, and you had 2 hours and to shoot it, and oh my God. And now with these drones, I mean, forget it. You drive out and your Subaru, you take the drone out of the
Yeah.
trunk
The,
and
the,
you go crazy with it.
this brings up another thing that occurred to me, and it occurred to me for the years of watching the program. You get the right moment of, two animals, I don't know, attacking two lions attacking a helpless a cub, a bear cub or something like that. You had to sit there for a long time, no? I mean, or did you just say, "Oh, must be lunchtime for the lions. Let's let's get in there." I'm thinking that you had to spend a ton of time waiting for those great moments.
Yeah, it's a combination of knowing where to be and when to be, all of that. But yeah, it's then you could be spending up to 2 weeks trying to get that one shot or longer.
Wow.
I mean, you could spend up to a month, in fact, waiting for that one shot. And let's say you do get a shot, well, you're just praying that you have good light. The camera's working, you're in the right position, nothing gets in the way. So not only do you have to be in the right spot, and there are all these other factors that have to all be working together to make it a real great scene, and edit it together. So yes.
Right. Listen, it's just a tremendous accomplishment. We talk about landing the man on the moon and all the other great things we can do. To me, the establishment of nature over 40 years is an accomplishment. Now, we're going to show, I guess, a preview of the 40th anniversary show. It's not very long, but this is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Uh, you're doing bees, and we're not talking about a hive of bees. We're talking about a bee. So we're ready to throw to it. Do you want to introduce it in some form? I mean,
Let me
talk
just
about technology. My goodness.
Yes, a fascinating story, having everything to do with the pandemic and the lockdown. So I'll start there and then show the clip, and I'll complete my thought on it.
Okay, so we're going to show the clip. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The 40th anniversary edition of Nature coming up October 20th, and on the Bronx Buzz, what could be more appropriate? Bees. Take a look.
In the spring of 2020, as the country goes into lockdown, outside, the garden is coming alive. As a wildlife filmmaker, I knew there were revelations here that could be just as amazing as anything I'd ever filmed.
These bees that just go,
Discovering the secret life of bees took me on a journey I was not expecting.
Well, there you go. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. The quality of it is just phenomenal.
Well, let me put this.
Now finish your story. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
let me put this in context for everybody. The guy who's filming and who's telling the story, his name is Martin Dawn, and he's probably the best wildlife macro photographer in the world. So if you're doing a film on ants or beetles or butterflies or anything like that, this is the guy you want to hire. So when we were all locked down and we couldn't go out, it gave him an opportunity to go into his garden and do something he was always curious about, and that is film the bees in his garden. But now that he couldn't travel and couldn't go anywhere, he could really spend some time doing that. So he has very specialized equipment, some of it built on his dining room table. He has specialized lenses. He has a vast knowledge of insects, and he had a year to film, and he filmed over 700 hours. And it's extraordinary what he discovered. I mean, it got to the extent where he had a relationship. He was able to identify one specific bee that he kind of followed.
That is unbelievable.
And got to know her a little bit. And so, when we talk about getting to know animals, and if you're shooting lions somewhere, you could, or chimpanzees, primates, sometimes they know who you are, and what you could do, and there's a thought process there. But bees, you think, come on.
My goodness.
Anyway, it's a hugely dramatic film, and his obsession over the hour trying to get close to them and detail their behavior.
One thing we do want to mention, because it is the Bronx Buzz, is that Fred is, excuse me, a longtime Bronxite. One of the other things that you do, you're on the board of the Bronx Children's Museum, hasn't been able to be open yet because of COVID. We all know that that's going on. But this is another place that especially young people are going to get to discover our world. Yes,
I was thrilled to be asked to be on the board. I grew up in the Bronx, and it's a borough that needs help in terms of providing educational opportunities, institutions for young people to go to learn about the world we're in, or just experience something different. So I was thrilled to be asked. I've been on the board now for a couple of years. They're still building, but apparently there will be a soft opening by the end of the year, which we're all looking forward to. And COVID has, of course, prevented us from really spending time in the building.
Right. Fred, we're almost out of time for this segment. I want to ask you one question. We've all learned from nature. Is there one thing that stands out for you in your personal growth and development that you've learned from being the executive producer of nature?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the natural world, nature has an incredible ability to heal itself. And so when we see problems with the environment that look doom and gloom, nature does have a way of healing itself if left alone and not unduly harmed. So there is great, I think, comfort and optimism knowing that nature can clean itself up and protect itself and create an environment for all living things. But we need to leave it alone, and there's just so much stress we can put on nature.
And I guess as a concluding statement, there's no way to divorce what you have done from the natural world. I mean, after all, the program is called Nature. Fred Kaufman, congrats on 40 years. Listen, I hope there's more than 40 to come and for the future, because we've got to keep appreciating the greatness of our beautiful, wonderful planet. And I certainly hope that you'll come back, I don't know, for number 41 or anytime you have something interesting for Bronx people. We want to have you back. Thank you very much. Congratulations to you, to all your colleagues at PBS. And let's everybody get on there October 20th for the anniversary show and all the other ones in the future. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will go to a reporter. We're going to talk about some of the issues in the Bronx. Don't go away.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Arthur. When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. Wasn't that exciting? What a wonderful program, and congrats to Fred Kaufman for being on Nature for 40 years. You can barely imagine it. But right now, we're going to say hello to Dawn Clancy, who's relatively new. That's a perfect comparison. Dawn Clancy is with the Norwood News, a reporter with the Norwood News. Nice to see you, Dawn. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Dawn, so let's do a little background. People in the Bronx haven't met you. Maybe they've been reading what you've been writing in the Norwood News. How'd you get here? What's your background? How'd you get to the Norwood News and your interest in journalism? Let's talk about that.
I started out writing nonfiction essays, like freelance work, and then from doing that, writing mostly about my own life, I decided I was tired of talking about myself. I wanted to talk about other people. So I decided to go back to school for journalism. I just graduated in May of 2021. While I was in school,
from where, you need to say you graduated from?
Columbia's graduate journalism program.
I didn't want you to leave that out because, you know, it carries some weight.
I hope so. It was a very expensive program.
I'm sure.
No, but while I was there, I interned at the Norwood News. The first story I did for them was the presidential election, November 2021. And I just stayed on from there. And now I'm getting to know the Bronx. I'm getting to know the neighborhood. I'm just really grateful that I've been able to kind of get my teeth into the journalism world through the Bronx.
Tell me about why you are interested in journalism. What drives you? What made you say, hey, you know what? I want to do this.
Because I'm really interested in telling people's stories, and I really don't like it when power takes advantage of people. That really gets under my skin. So I want to be able to tell people's stories. I want to be able to tell it like it is. I want to be able to read between the lines and say, hey, they're saying this, but it really means this. And I also should mention as well that I actually traveled quite a bit. I lived in London, England for 3 years, and I traveled quite a bit. And as I got to know different people and different cultures, I was like, you know what? There's a whole world out there of other people who have other stories, who are impacted, and their lives are impacted in ways that mine will never be. It's not the same. And That's
You
why, that's what drives me
you
to
wanted
it.
to tell that story. I have to tell you that for me, being in the Bronx and doing what I do, the motivation is the same. I always tell people I feel like the Bronx is still undiscovered territory. There's just so much here. So on that note, before there is a very important issue that you wrote about that I do want to get to, but tell me about what it's. I always love hearing what somebody from the outside who's coming in to cover the Bronx. What's it been like? What's your understanding of the borough of the Bronx right now, and what's it like to cover news in the borough of the Bronx?
Well, first, I will say that it's a bit frustrating because there are so many stories in the Bronx.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I'm just one person. I can only do so much, but that's the first thing. And the second thing I will say is
I
that
can relate to that, by the way, extensively. I promise you.
I
So
mean,
go ahead.
I feel like, there's just so many stories and not enough time. But as an outsider coming in, I just see a lot of injustice. I never understood, the level of noise in the Bronx. You go into the South Bronx, you walk around, these people are living under these conditions. I do kind of feel like it is the borough that gets kind of swept to the side. COVID shined a really bright spotlight on different things that were going on in the Bronx that aren't fair in many ways to many people. And now that COVID isn't over, of course, but I feel like we're coming out of it a little bit. Maybe we're heading towards normal. It's like, well, what's going to happen?
Right.
People wrote extensively about all these problems. Well, now what's going to happen?
It was interesting, and we know that what happened in Elmsford and Elmhurst, in Queens, and in other places, when the original numbers came out, and that would be at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, the Bronx didn't show any numbers. And I guess you could look at that and say, well, okay, the problems are in Elmhurst, Queens, or in Brooklyn, or wherever they are. I said, if you're talking about, people with diabetes and asthma and other issues as being, the draw for this horrible virus, it's only a matter of time. And sure enough, it was only a matter of time till the Bronx unfortunately caught up and in some cases surpassed some of the other places. Let's talk a little bit about coming out of COVID. And that was what you wrote specifically about for the Norwood News. And that was the notion of outdoor dining. I actually think that the outdoor dining concept was one of the things that was a winner coming out of COVID. Talk to me a little bit about Community Board 7 and what their decision was like. There are issues that would say, well, maybe we shouldn't continue outdoor dining, but the people in the Community Board seem to like it.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't want to be too black and white about this, but in Community Board 7, it's kind of half and half. You have half of the Community Board that's very business oriented and believes that outdoor dining will allow restaurants to continue to thrive in the borough. It'll make neighborhoods more vibrant. You have people sitting outside, having coffee, having cocktails. It brings a different energy to the area. That's one side of the argument. The other is people who live in these areas are just like, look, I don't want that potential noise waking me up in the middle of the night when I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work.
Yep. And I'll add one thing as a Bronxite who owns a car. It doesn't help parking. I mean, they take up all that space. But Community Board 7, the vote, I guess this was the Housing, Land Use, and Economic Development Committee, and they said that they like this idea. They voted in a way for development and economic development over some of these other issues.
Yes, they did. They voted. It was a 3-vote majority. They voted in favor of providing the Department of City Planning with a letter of support, because they're just kind of going around now trying to get support from all the community boards for this permanent option for restaurants. But yeah, they voted in favor of it. But Community Board 8, if I didn't go to their meeting
in the article. Yes,
they didn't. They didn't. They think it's premature. They want more time to think about it. They want more time to ask questions. I mean, it makes sense.
It's a very difficult question because I mean, I know for myself, it's like last summer I said, wow, what a revelation. It's so much fun. It's so nice to be outdoors. More people are out. It certainly increases capacity for restaurants who now can do some indoor dining as well. I mean, it sounded like win-win. But then, if I'm driving on Amsterdam Avenue and I want to have some dinner and park my car, good luck. It's like it's not happening. And certainly in Bronx neighborhoods, it's not happening. So I understand. Do you think, I'm just wondering, do you think that there's a compromise somewhere, limit hours, deal with noise? I mean, the parking is going to be a big issue because the structures are going to be there and it takes up space. You can't remove them. Do you think there's a way to deal with that? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I don't know either.
Shaking her head, no.
I really don't. I mean, you're going up against, the need for economic development, against residents, community who live in the area that, don't want their quality of life issues to be a casualty of this permanent option. I think I think the city is really going to have to put a lot of attention into the plan that they have to inspect these outdoor spaces. And I think it's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis. You might have a restaurant over here who's doing a great job of respecting their neighbors. Then down the block, you might have a restaurant that is there's garbage, there's extra noise. The city is going to have to crack down on that. You asked me earlier about what, coming into the Bronx, something that I noticed. And I will say that I don't think the people of the Bronx are listened to enough. Don't think they're listened to. They're not. So when you ask me,
argument from me, that's for darn sure.
I mean, there have been times where I've just wanted to walk around the streets and be like, just pick a random person off the street and be like, hey, did you hear about this new climate bill? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Because I just want to know, because it just seems like the people are left out of the equation. It's like, wait a minute, these people live here.
Yeah. And the thing which I talk about all the time, 1.4 million people. I mean, the city of Boston has 600,000 people, and they have network television and they have daily newspapers, plural. We just have a couple of weeklies. And 1.4 million people are underserved in terms of media. So what do you have on your docket for next? Are you working on something in particular, or do you have like a goal of what you'd like to write something about?
I mean, like I said in the beginning, there are so many stories in the Bronx. I hope to be able to get more acquainted with the boroughs so that I can find them. I mean, I'm talking about, getting in between the cracks in the sidewalk and finding those stories. I know with the latest flooding issue, there are people living in basement apartments in the Bronx that were really impacted by that. That could be an interesting story to pursue.
And certainly also, just on that note, the daylighting of Tibbetts Brook, which could alleviate some of the issues, the water issues on the Deegan. I mean, that's among the myriad of them. We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to thank you, and I want to urge you, because you are just the kind of person we want to have around our borough at the Bronx, and urge our friend Sheila to say, okay, let's get Dawn out there as often as possible, because this is there's obviously a lot going on. So we will wish you good luck, and thank you for joining us this evening. Boy, I'm looking forward to, I'll feed you some stories. We got some ideas of things that are going on, and we certainly appreciate your work already, and I hope to look for you more in the Norwood News. It's Dawn Clancy, reporter for the Norwood News. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
So that'll do it. We thank Fred Kaufman from the TV show Nature. We thank Dawn Clancy from the Norwood News for joining us. And you know what happens here on BronxNet Television next week? We'll be back with more. So we'll see you then. Good night.